My stepdad installed a camera pointing at my bedroom to protect me from our neighbor, so I ran to that neighbor for help. I was 9 when Thomas moved in next door to us. He had just lost custody of his 2 young daughters, and as soon as my stepdad saw him, he rushed over to me. "That man there is a creep," he said, grazing my lower back. "I'll have to start doing things to protect you, sweetheart." He then gave me this weird smile, almost as if he liked that a supposed predator moved in next to us. That night, he installed a security camera to watch Thomas, but the security camera pointed at my bedroom. He started these nightly safety checks where he'd come into my room after Mom fell asleep. He'd sit on my bed and explain in way too much detail what men like Thomas supposedly wanted to do. The first time I tried telling Mom about the weird feeling Jeff gave me, she was folding laundry in the living room. "Mom, Jeff keeps coming into my room at night and—" "Oh, honey," she cut me off without even looking up. "Jeff loves you like his own daughter." "But Mom, the camera he put up is pointing at my window." She finally looked at me, but her face was annoyed, not concerned. "Stop being dramatic. Jeff knows what he's doing. He manages security for his business. Plus, he's just protecting you from that creep next door who looks at you all the time." She then gave me this awkward half hug, then told me to go do homework. But there was something weird about what she said. Thomas never even looked at me or any kids. When the school bus stopped at our corner, he'd go back inside. When families walked by, he'd turn away. But there was something he did. Whenever Jeff took me out alone for ice cream or to the park, Thomas would suddenly need to walk his dog. When Jeff set up the kiddie pool and bought me this tiny bikini that made me uncomfortable, Thomas picked that exact moment to wash his car. Jeff got worse after that. The tickle fights lasted too long. He insisted on giving me baths because Mom worked late. Everything exploded the day Jeff cornered me in the garage. Mom was at work and he'd been drinking beer all afternoon. "You're becoming such a pretty girl," he said, putting his hands on my shoulders and pushing me against the wall. "Let me show you something special." I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All those talks about stranger danger and Thomas being dangerous spun in my head, but Jeff's breath smelled like beer and his hands were squeezing too tight. "Sorry to bother you." Thomas stood in the garage doorway. My cat got out. "Orange tabby. Mind if I check in here?" Jeff's whole face changed instantly. His hands dropped and he put on his friendly neighbor smile. "No cat here, Thomas. You should leave." But Thomas stepped inside anyway. I definitely saw him run this way. "Let me just check behind those boxes real quick." I said leave. Jeff's voice got sharp. "Just need to find my cat," Thomas said calmly, not moving. I slipped past Jeff and ran inside while they stared at each other. That night, Mom and Jeff sat me down for a talk. They said Thomas was trying to destroy our family, that I should never go near him again, and that I should always trust my stepdad because he wants what's best for me. I didn't believe a word though, because all I could think about was how Thomas saved me. So the next day when I found Thomas walking his dog, the words just spilled out of me. "Jeff does things. He touches me and—" "I know," Thomas said quietly. "I've been documenting everything." He then took me to the police station to report it. But when we walked in, things didn't go our way at all. Instead of the police officers listening to a child telling them that their stepdad was touching her, they laughed. They looked at Thomas and told him, "Stop manipulating this young girl. Jeff Morrison coaches softball. He runs a charity thrift store. He'd never do that. You, on the other hand, it seems fitting given your past why you're here with this little girl." I tried to speak up, to defend Thomas and explain my truth, but a woman officer actually led me away and interviewed me. She didn't ask about my stepdad. She asked about Thomas, and no amount of explaining got through to her. They sent us both out of the station, but only after threatening to arrest Thomas if he made another report. The police must have called Jeff right after we left because when I got home, both he and Mom were waiting in the living room. Mom's face was red with fury as she grabbed my shoulders and shook me. "Do you know what people will say? Jeff's reputation could be ruined because of you." I saw him behind her, staring at me with his hand on his trousers. That night, he came into my room. I won't describe what happened, but when he finally left, I could barely move. I lay there for an hour, maybe two, too traumatized to speak, cry, do anything. Then when they were finally asleep, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my window as quietly as possible and climbed out. I had to get help. I limped across the dark yard to Thomas's house and knocked softly on his back door. And when he opened it, that's when I saw them. His 2 daughters on the couch in the living room, covered in bruises. My heart stopped. The bruises on their arms and legs looked fresh, purple and yellow marks that made my stomach turn. Fear crashed through me like ice water. Was Thomas hurting them too? Had I just escaped one monster to run straight to another? The older girl, maybe 7, saw me first. Her eyes went wide and she jumped up from the couch, rushing toward me. I stumbled backward, ready to run, but then she spoke. "Dad, is she okay? She's bleeding." The younger one, probably 5, scrambled after her sister. "She looks hurt bad, Daddy, like we did when Mommy—" "Girls, go to your room," Thomas said quickly, but his voice stayed gentle. They hesitated, looking between me and their father with worried faces. "But Dad, she needs help like we did," the older one insisted. "Remember when you found us at Mom's and—" "Alexander, please, take your sister upstairs. I'll help her." The girls reluctantly headed for the stairs, but not before the younger one grabbed my hand. "It's okay. Our dad saves people. He saved us from Mommy." Their words spun in my head as Thomas carefully helped me to the couch. My legs shook so bad I could barely stand. He grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around my shoulders, then sat in a chair across from me, keeping distance between us. "I need to call an ambulance," he said, reaching for his phone. "No!" The word ripped out of me. "They'll send me back. Mom won't believe me. The police already think you're lying." Thomas set the phone down slowly. His hands trembled slightly. "Your injuries need your daughters," I interrupted, needing to understand. "Those bruises? Did you—" "Their mother did that." His voice turned hard, but not at me. "She's had them for the past 3 months. They called me crying 2 days ago. Said she'd been drinking again, getting violent. I drove 4 hours and found them locked in a closet." He stood up and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. "I've been documenting her abuse for 2 years. Photos, medical records, recordings. The court still gave her primary custody because she convinced them I was unstable." He showed me photo after photo. His daughters with black eyes, bruised ribs, cuts on their arms, medical reports, text messages from his ex-wife threatening to hurt them if he didn't send more money. "But you lost custody," I said, confused. "She's good at manipulation, like Jeff." He put the folder away and sat back down. "She told the judge I was violent, paid a friend to lie about witnessing me hit the girls. The court believed her because—" He paused, running a hand through his hair. "Because I have a past. Nothing involving children, but enough that when she painted me as dangerous, it stuck." The room felt too quiet. I pulled the blanket tighter around me. "I need to document what Jeff did to you," Thomas said carefully. "Photos of any injuries. Write down everything you remember. We'll build a case they can't ignore. They already ignored us once. That was one attempt. We don't stop." He grabbed a notebook and pen. "Start from the beginning. When did did Jeff first. A car door slammed outside. We both froze. Through the window, I saw Jeff's truck in my driveway, earlier than usual. Mom's car pulled up behind him. He knows I'm gone, I whispered. Thomas moved quickly but calmly. Girls, he called up the stairs. Quiet time, stay in your room. He led me to his kitchen, away from windows. They can't legally force you back tonight. You're injured and reporting abuse, but they'll try. The pounding on his front door started less than a minute later. Thomas, open up. I know she's in there. Jeff's voice boomed through the house. Thomas looked at me. Do you want me to answer? I nodded, too scared to speak. He walked to the door but didn't open it. She's safe, Jeff. Go home. Safe? You kidnapped her. Open this door or I'm calling the police. Please do, Thomas replied evenly. I'll show them her injuries. Silence. Then Mom's voice, shaky and high. Please, Thomas. She's confused. She makes up stories. Just let me take my daughter home. She's not making anything up, and you know it. More silence. Then Jeff again, lower, more threatening. You have no idea who you're messing with. I know people. Important people. You think losing your kids was bad? I'll destroy what's left of your pathetic life. Everything you're saying is being recorded, Thomas announced. Please continue threatening me. Jeff kicked the door hard enough to rattle the frame. You're done. You hear me? Done. We heard them arguing as they walked away. Mom's voice carried back. Maybe we should just call the police. Let them sort. Shut up, Jeff snapped. You want everyone knowing your daughter's a liar? That she's troubled? I'll handle this. Their car doors slammed. Engines started. But instead of leaving, they sat in their driveway, watching Thomas's house. They're not going anywhere, I said, peeking through the blinds. Good. Let them watch. Thomas handed me the notebook again. Write everything. Date it. Be specific. I started writing, my hand shaking so bad the words looked like scribbles. Thomas made tea and set it beside me, then went to check on his daughters. I heard him reading them a story, his voice calm like none of this was happening. An hour passed. Jeff's truck still idled in the driveway. I'd filled 3 pages when Thomas came back downstairs. They're asleep, he said. How are you doing? Scared, tired, everything hurts. He nodded. In the morning, we'll go to the hospital. Get your injuries documented properly. Then find a lawyer. Jeff said he knows people. So do I. Different kinds of people. People who actually help children instead of hurt them. The notebook felt heavy in my lap. What if no one believes us again? Then we keep trying. We find someone who will. He sat across from me again. I've been watching Jeff for months. The way he looks at you. The excuses to be alone with you. I started keeping notes, taking pictures when I could. Like when he made me wear that bikini. I have photos of him watching you. His expression. The way he positioned that pool so he could see it from multiple windows. Thomas pulled out another folder. I've documented every incident I've witnessed. The late night visits to your room when your mom's car isn't home. The times he's taken you out alone. How you look when you come back. Page after page of detailed notes. Times, dates, observations, photos taken from his window showing Jeff leading me to his truck. My body language screaming discomfort. Why did you do all this? Because I recognized the signs. The grooming. The isolation. The way he was setting you up. His voice got quiet. My ex-wife did the same thing to our girls. Convinced everyone I was dangerous while she was the one hurting them. I couldn't let it happen to another child. A knock at the back door made us both jump, but it wasn't Jeff. Mr. Thomas? A small voice called. It's Mrs. Grant from down the street. I saw the commotion. Is everything all right? Thomas looked at me, asking permission with his eyes. I nodded. Mrs. Grant, who had to be at least 70, stepped inside and immediately noticed me. Her eyes took in the blanket, my tear-stained face, the notebook. Oh dear, she breathed. What's happened? Jeff hurt me, I said before I could stop myself. He's been hurting me and no one believes me except Thomas. She sat down heavily in a kitchen chair. I've wondered, the way that man watches you, how nervous you get around him. She looked at Thomas. Is that why Jeff's sitting in his driveway like a guard dog? He's trying to intimidate us, Thomas explained. We went to the police earlier, but they didn't believe you. Mrs. Grant's mouth pressed into a thin line. Of course not. Jeff coaches their kids, donates to their fundraisers. She reached over and patted my hand. What do you need? The simple question broke something in me. I started crying again. Ugly sobs that shook my whole body. Mrs. Grant just sat there, holding my hand, while Thomas got more tissues. We need people to know the truth, Thomas said. Jeff's going to spin this. Make me the villain. Say I kidnapped her. Filled her head with lies. Then we better start spreading the truth first. Mrs. Grant pulled out her phone. I'm calling my daughter. She's a social worker in the next county. They won't have the same allegiances. While she made calls, Thomas helped me finish documenting everything. Every incident, every touch, every threat. My hand cramped from writing, but I didn't stop. Jeff's truck finally left around midnight. Thomas insisted I sleep in his daughter's room, on a camping mattress on the floor. The girls woke up when I came in. Are you staying? The younger one whispered. Just tonight. That's what Dad said about us, but we've been here 2 whole days now. She sounded happy about it. Maybe you can stay 2 whole days too. I lay there in the dark, listening to their breathing, feeling safer than I had in months. But I knew Jeff wouldn't give up. He'd come back with a plan, with lies, with ways to hurt Thomas, and get me back. Sure enough, the next morning brought new problems. Thomas woke me early, his face grim. Jeff's been busy. Look, he showed me his phone. The neighborhood Facebook page was full of posts about Thomas luring me to his house. How I'd been seen climbing through his window at night. How he'd manipulated a troubled child who made up stories about her loving stepfather. They're believing him, I said, scrolling through comment after comment supporting Jeff. Some are. But look, he pointed to a few dissenting voices. Mrs. Grant defending us. A few others saying they'd noticed things too. It's not everyone. His daughters came downstairs still in pajamas. Can we have pancakes? The older one asked. In a minute, Alexander. First, I need you both to understand something. Thomas knelt down to their level. People might say mean things about Daddy today, but you know the truth, right? They nodded solemnly. You save people, the younger one said. Like you saved us from Mommy. That's right. And sometimes when you try to save people, other people get angry. A car pulled up outside. Through the window, I saw a woman in professional clothes get out, followed by Mrs. Grant. That's my daughter Nathaniel, Mrs. Grant said when Thomas let them in. She drove 2 hours to get here. Nathaniel looked like a younger version of her mother, with the same determined set to her jaw. She took one look at me and her expression softened. I'm a mandated reporter, she said, which means I have to file a report about what's happened to you. But I can file it in my county, where Jeff doesn't have connections. They'll just send me back, I said. Not if we do this right. First, we need to get you to a hospital. Document everything. Then we file reports with multiple agencies. CPS, state police, anyone who will listen. Jeff will say Thomas kidnapped me. Then we'll prove otherwise. Thomas, do you have security cameras? He nodded. They'll show her coming here on her own. Injured. Seeking help. Good. We'll need that footage. Nathaniel turned to me. This won't be easy. Jeff will fight back. He'll try to discredit everyone helping you. Are you prepared for that? I thought thought about going back, about more nights with Jeff, about mom choosing him over me again and again. I'm ready. The next few hours blurred together. The hospital, where a kind nurse took photos of every bruise and cut. The police station in the next county, where officers actually listened. Nathaniel filing report after report, making calls, refusing to let anyone dismiss us. But Jeff wasn't idle. By afternoon, he'd convinced half the neighborhood that Thomas was a predator who'd kidnapped his daughters and was now targeting me. He'd even gotten some parents to pull their kids inside when Thomas walked by. He's isolating us, Thomas said, watching from his window as neighbors whispered and pointed, making it harder for us to get support. His phone rang. The school, saying his daughters couldn't return until the situation was resolved. Then another call. His job, suggesting he take some time off while things got sorted out. He's trying to destroy you, I said, because of me. Number. He's trying to silence you. There's a difference. But I could see the strain on his face. His daughters watched cartoons, oblivious to how their world was shrinking. That evening, things escalated. We were eating dinner when we heard shouting outside. A group of neighbors had gathered in Jeff's yard, listening to him spin his tales. He's had those girls for 3 days now, Jeff's voice carried clearly. Won't let their mother see them. Now he's got my stepdaughter in there filling her head with lies about me. We should call CPS, someone suggested. I did, Jeff lied smoothly. They're investigating him, but these things take time, and meanwhile our children aren't safe. Thomas closed the curtains, but we could still hear them, planning patrols, watching his house, protecting their kids from the dangerous man next door. Dad? Alexander looked scared. Are they talking about you? Yes, sweetheart. But remember what I said. Sometimes people believe lies because they're easier than the truth. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Give her back or things get worse. Then another. You think you've had it bad? Wait until tomorrow. He's threatening you, I said, reading over his shoulder. Good. Threats leave evidence. Thomas screenshot everything. Let him dig his own grave. But I could see the toll it was taking. Thomas had saved his daughters, saved me, and now Jeff was systematically destroying his life in return. That night, I heard him on the phone with his lawyer. His ex-wife was using the situation to file for full custody again. The neighborhood complaints were being added to her case. Even though he'd saved his daughters from abuse, he might lose them because he'd tried to save me too. I found him sitting on his back porch after the call, head in his hands. I'm sorry, I whispered. I've ruined everything for you. He looked up, eyes fierce. Number Jeff ruined everything. Your mother ruined everything. The system that fails kids like you ruined everything. You did nothing wrong. But your daughters will be fine. I've fought for them before. I'll fight again. He managed a tired smile. Besides, Nathaniel says our case is strong. The hospital documented extensive injuries. The police in her county are taking it seriously. Jeff's going to have bigger problems than spreading rumors soon. As if on cue, his phone rang. Nathaniel. They're moving tonight, she said, her voice excited through the speaker. The state police want to arrest Jeff before he has time to destroy evidence or intimidate more witnesses. They'll be there within the hour. My heart pounded. This was it. Either they'd believe us and Jeff would finally face justice, or what if he convinces them too? I asked. He won't, Nathaniel said firmly. I've made sure the right people are handling this. Officers who specialize in these cases, who know how predators operate. We waited, watching the clock. 40 minutes, 50. Then, blue and red lights filled the street. But they weren't heading for Jeff's house. They pulled up to Thomas's. My stomach dropped as the police car doors opened. 2 officers stepped out, their faces unreadable in the flashing lights. Thomas squeezed my shoulder gently before walking to the front door. Stay here with the girls, he said quietly. Whatever happens, remember, we have the truth on our side. But as he opened the door, I saw Jeff standing behind the officers, his face arranged in a mask of concern. My blood ran cold. Officers, thank God you're here, Jeff said, his voice dripping with false worry. My stepdaughter's been missing for over 24 hours. This man has been filling her head with terrible lies about me. The lead officer, a tall woman with graying hair, looked between Jeff and Thomas. Sir, we received a report that you're harboring a runaway minor and 2 children who were removed from their mother's custody. They're my daughters, Thomas said calmly. I have documentation showing their mother was abusing them, and this young girl came to me for help after being assaulted by her stepfather. Jeff's face contorted with practiced anguish. See, he's turned her against me. I've raised that girl for 3 years. I coach her friends' softball teams. Ask anyone in this neighborhood. I'm a pillar of this community. The second officer, younger with a thick mustache, shifted uncomfortably. We need to see the children, sir. All of them. Thomas hesitated, then stepped aside. They're inside, but I'm not leaving them alone with him. He pointed at Jeff. As we walked into the living room, Alexander and her sister pressed against me, sensing the tension. The officer's eyes swept over us, taking in the girl's fading bruises, my notebook still on the coffee table, the blanket I'd wrapped around myself the night before. She needs to come home, Jeff said, reaching for me. Her mother is worried sick. I flinched away from him, and the female officer noticed. Miss, are you hurt? Before I could answer, Jeff jumped in. She's always been dramatic, makes up stories for attention. That's why we've been considering therapy. I have hospital records from this morning, Thomas said, pulling out a folder, documenting her injuries, and these are photos of my daughter's injuries from their mother's abuse. The male officer barely glanced at the papers. That's a matter for family court, sir. Right now, we need to return this minor to her legal guardians. But he hurt me. The words burst out of me. He comes into my room at night. He touches me. She's confused. Jeff interrupted smoothly. Thomas here has been feeding her these ideas. He lost custody of his own kids. What does that tell you? The female officer knelt down to my level. Sweetheart, has Mr. Thomas touched you inappropriately? No, Thomas saved me. Jeff is the one who— Officers, Jeff cut in again. I have text messages from my wife. Our daughter has been acting out lately, telling stories at school, seeking attention. We think Thomas has been grooming her, taking advantage of her vulnerability. He pulled out his phone, showing them what looked like a conversation with mom. My heart sank as I realized he'd been preparing for this, creating false evidence while we'd been building our real case. The younger officer read the messages, his expression hardening. Sir, he said to Thomas, I'm going to need you to step outside while we sort this out. I'm not leaving these children alone with him, Thomas said firmly. Are you refusing to comply with police instructions? The officer's hand moved to his belt. Nathaniel chose that moment to arrive, Mrs. Grant right behind her. Officers, I'm a social worker from Riverside County. I've been documenting this case. This child has disclosed severe abuse by her stepfather. Jeff's mask slipped for just a moment, anger flashing in his eyes before he recovered. More people he's manipulated. This is exactly what I was afraid of. He's building a network to support his lies. I have photographs, Nathaniel said, holding up her phone. Taken at Riverside General Hospital this morning. Bruising consistent with assault, probably self-inflicted, Jeff said quickly. Or Thomas did it to make me look bad. Officers, every minute she spends with him, he's poisoning her more against her family. The female officer stood up looking conflicted. We need to follow protocol. The child needs to be returned to her legal guardians while investigations proceed. No! I grabbed Thomas's arm. Please don't make me go back. He'll hurt me again. He said he would. He said, see how hysterical she gets? Jeff shook his head sadly. This is what I mean. Thomas has her completely brainwashed. Thomas's daughters started crying, clinging to their father. The scene was chaos. Children crying, adults arguing, police trying to maintain order. And through it all, Jeff stood there with that concerned expression, playing the worried stepfather perfectly. Everyone calm down, the female officer said loudly. Sir, she addressed Thomas, I understand your concerns, but without a court order, we have to return the minor to her legal guardians. Then get a court order, Nathaniel said. I'll file for emergency custody. Just give us 24 hours. Mom's already on her way to pick her up, Jeff said. She's devastated, hasn't slept since her daughter disappeared. As if on cue, Mom's car pulled up outside. She got out, and I was shocked to see she'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled. She looked like a worried mother, not the woman who dismissed my pleas for help. My baby, she cried, rushing toward me. Thank God you're safe. I was so scared. I backed away, but she grabbed me, pulling me into a suffocating hug. Mom, please, Jeff hurt me. You have to believe me. Shh, honey, it's okay. You're confused. Thomas put these ideas in your head, but you're safe now. Over her shoulder, I saw Jeff watching me, a small smile playing at his lips. He'd won this round, and he knew it. Ma'am, the female officer said to Mom, has your daughter made these allegations before? Mom's performance was flawless. She's been struggling lately, acting out. We think it's because of the divorce from her biological father. Jeff's been nothing but patient and loving with her. That's not true! I struggled against her grip. You know what he does. You have to know. Officers, Thomas said desperately, I have documentation. Months of observation, photos, notes. This child is in danger. And I have a restraining order, Jeff said, pulling out more papers. Filed this morning. This man has been stalking my family, taking pictures of my stepdaughter, watching our house. The officers examined the paperwork. I could see their expressions changing, buying into Jeff's narrative. Thomas looked stricken as he realized Jeff had outmaneuvered us. Sir, you're going to need to stay away from this family, the male officer said to Thomas. And we'll need to notify CPS about your daughter's situation. My daughters are abuse victims, Thomas said. I have custody papers, medical records, which we'll review. The officer cut him off. But right now, this child needs to go home. Mom started pulling me toward the door. I dug my heels in, grabbing onto furniture, fighting with everything I had. No, please, he'll hurt me. Thomas, don't let them take me. Thomas moved to help me, but the male officer stepped between us. Sir, do not interfere. Dad, Alexander cried out. Don't let them take her. She's scared like we were scared of Mommy. Her words hung in the air for a moment. The female officer paused, something flickering in her eyes, but Jeff was ready. See, he's even got his own kids involved in his delusions. Officers, this man is dangerous. Who knows what he's been doing to those poor girls? That did it. The female officer's expression hardened. Sir, we're going to need you and your daughters to come to the station for questioning. What? Thomas stared at her in disbelief. I'm trying to protect a child from abuse, and you're treating me like a criminal? Just routine questions, she said, but her tone suggested otherwise. Mom had dragged me to the doorway. I made one last desperate attempt, breaking free and running to Nathaniel. Please, you said you'd help. You said you'd file reports. Don't let them take me back. Nathaniel held me tight. I am filing reports, but I can't stop the police from returning you to your legal guardians, not without a court order, which she won't get, Jeff said confidently, because judges don't give custody to random social workers based on a troubled child's lies. The male officer gently but firmly separated me from Nathaniel. Come on, miss, time to go home. As they led me out, I saw the neighbors watching from their windows and driveways. Jeff had turned them all against Thomas. They looked satisfied, seeing the predator being questioned by police while the concerned parents rescued their child. Mom pushed me into the backseat of her car. Through the window, I watched the police leading Thomas and his daughters to their patrol car. Alexander pressed her small hand against the glass, tears streaming down her face. We stared at each other. Two children failed by the adults meant to protect us. The drive home was silent except for Mom's sniffles. Her performance had ended the moment we left Thomas's street. When we pulled into our driveway, Jeff was already there, standing by the front door with his arms crossed. Go to your room, Mom said coldly. We'll deal with you later. I ran inside, but Jeff caught my arm in the hallway. He leaned close, his breath hot on my ear. You think you're smart? You just made things so much worse for yourself and for Thomas. He released me with a shove. I stumbled to my room and slammed the door, collapsing on my bed. Outside, I could hear Mom and Jeff talking in low voices, planning their next move. An hour later, Mom came in without knocking. She sat on my bed, but her expression wasn't motherly. It was cold, calculating. Do you have any idea what you've done? She said. Jeff's reputation could have been ruined. We could have lost everything. He hurts me, I whispered. You know he does. She slapped me. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but sharp enough to shock me. Jeff provides for us. He loves us. And you try to destroy him with your lies? They're not lies. The police think they are. The neighbors think they are. Everyone thinks they are except that creep next door who's probably going to jail for kidnapping his own daughters. She stood up. You're grounded. No phone, no computer, no leaving this room except for school and meals. And if you tell anyone else these lies, things will get much worse. For you and for Thomas. She left, locking my door from the outside. I heard her footsteps fade, then Jeff's heavier ones approaching. He didn't come in, just stood outside my door. Sweet dreams, princess, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We have all the time in the world now. I curled into a ball, pulling my blankets over my head. Thomas was at the police station. His daughters were probably being taken back to their abusive mother, and I was trapped, more alone than ever. The next few days blurred together in a nightmare of isolation. Jeff had installed a new lock on my door, one that only locked from the outside. He controlled when I could leave my room, always watching, always smiling that terrible smile. At school, I tried to tell my teacher, but Jeff had gotten there first. He'd met with the principal, explaining how I'd been acting out and making up terrible stories about him, how Thomas had been filling my head with lies. They looked at me with pity now, not concern. Your stepfather is worried about you, my teacher said gently. Maybe you should talk to the school counselor about why you're saying these things. The counselor was no better. She'd already been briefed by Jeff, who'd painted himself as the concerned father dealing with a troubled child. Every word I said was filtered through that lens. Sometimes when we're upset, we create stories to explain our feelings, she said. Have you been feeling angry about your parents' divorce? This isn't about the divorce. Jeff touches me. He comes into into my room. Has Mr. Thomas been telling you to say these things? She interrupted. Your stepfather mentioned he's been showing concerning interest in you. I gave up. Jeff had poisoned everyone against me, just like he'd poisoned them against Thomas. I found out what happened to Thomas through whispered conversations I overheard. The police had questioned him for hours. His ex-wife had shown up with her lawyer, demanding her daughters back. Without the bruises being fresh and with Jeff's campaign against him, she'd convinced the police that Thomas had kidnapped them during her custodial time. The girls had been returned to their mother. Thomas had been released but warned to stay away from all children in the neighborhood, including me. The restraining order meant he couldn't come within 500 feet of our property. But Thomas didn't give up. I saw him sometimes, walking his dog at the exact edge of the restraining order boundary. He'd look toward our house, and I'd try to signal him from my window. But Jeff had noticed. Seems like Thomas can't take a hint, he said one evening, standing behind me at my window. Maybe I need to help him understand. The next day, Thomas's car tires were slashed. The day after that, someone spray-painted Predator on his garage door. Jeff had alibis for both incidents, of course. He'd been at work with dozens of witnesses, but I knew he was behind it. Just like I knew he was behind the sudden problems Thomas faced at work, the anonymous complaints to his employer about his concerning behavior around children. 2 weeks after I'd been forced home, everything escalated. Jeff had started his nighttime visits again, each one worse than the last. I'd tried barricading my door with furniture, but he'd simply removed it all while I was at school. That night, I heard him coming down the hallway, but then I heard something else, a soft tapping at my window. I rushed over to see Mrs. Grant standing in our backyard, holding a flashlight. Open the window, she mouthed. I struggled with the lock Jeff had installed, but managed to crack it open a few inches. Thomas sent me, she whispered urgently. He can't come himself because of the restraining order, but we know you're in danger. Nathaniel's been fighting to get an emergency hearing. We just need a little more time. I don't have time, I whispered back, hearing Jeff's footsteps getting closer. He's coming. Tomorrow night, Mrs. Grant said quickly. Be ready. We're going to. My door opened, and Jeff stood there, his face dark with anger. Mrs. Grant ducked below the window, but he'd seen her flashlight. Who were you talking to? He demanded. No one. I was just. He crossed the room in 2 strides, shoving me aside to look out the window. Mrs. Grant was gone, but he saw the disturbed grass where she'd been standing. That old bitch, he snarled. She's working with Thomas, isn't she? He grabbed my arm, squeezing hard enough to bruise. What did she tell you? What are they planning? Nothing. He shook me hard. Don't lie to me. I know they're planning something, but it won't work. I'm too smart for them. He stormed out, and I heard him on the phone with Mom. Within minutes, they were both in the living room, strategizing. I pressed my ear to my door, trying to hear. We need to discredit her too, Jeff was saying. Make it look like she's part of Thomas's delusions. I'll call the police tomorrow, Mom agreed. Tell them she's been harassing us, helping Thomas stalk our daughter. No, better idea. I could hear Jeff's smile. We'll make it look like she's been helping Thomas with something worse. Plant some evidence, let the police draw their own conclusions. My blood ran cold. They were going to frame Mrs. Grant, just like they'd turned everyone against Thomas. I had to warn her. But how? I was locked in. No phone, no computer. The window was my only option, but Jeff would be watching now. I waited until the house was quiet, then tried the window again. It was locked tight. Jeff must have secured it from the outside while I was in the bathroom. I was completely trapped. The next day at school, I tried to find someone, anyone, who would listen, but Jeff's poison had spread too far. Teachers redirected me to the counselor. The counselor talked about my fixation on these stories. Even my friends avoided me now, their parents having warned them about my lies. During lunch, I saw a police car in the school parking lot. My heart leapt. Maybe they were here to investigate Jeff, but then I saw him walking out of the principal's office with 2 officers, shaking their hands, looking concerned and fatherly. He saw me watching and winked. That afternoon, I was called to the principal's office. The same 2 officers were there, along with the principal, the counselor, and Mom. Honey, Mom said, her voice syrupy sweet. These officers need to ask you some questions about Mrs. Grant. The female officer leaned forward. We've received some concerning information about Mrs. Grant's relationship with Mr. Thomas, and we understand she's been trying to contact you. I knew this was a trap, but I didn't know how to avoid it. She's just worried about me. Worried? Or involved in something inappropriate? The male officer asked. Your stepfather found some disturbing photos on Thomas's computer. Photos of children, including you. That's not true, I protested. Jeff is lying. He's making all of this up because what? Jeff interrupted, his voice gentle but his eyes hard. Because I care about your safety? Because I'm trying to protect you from predators? You're the predator, I screamed, jumping to my feet. You're the one who hurts me. You're the one who— Mom grabbed me, pulling me back down. See? This is what Thomas has done to her. Filled her head with these terrible ideas. Now Mrs. Grant is involved too, helping him manipulate our daughter. The officers exchanged glances. I could see they believed every word. We'll need to question Mrs. Grant, the female officer said, and we'll need you to stay away from her, she added to me, for your own safety. I felt the walls closing in. Jeff had systematically eliminated everyone who could help me. Thomas was neutralized by the restraining order. His daughters were back with their abusive mother. Mrs. Grant would soon be under investigation. Nathaniel was fighting the system, but the system was rigged in Jeff's favor. That night, Jeff came to my room with a smile. You see how this works? He said, sitting on my bed. I own this town. I own the police. I own your school. And I own you. He reached for me and I scrambled away, but there was nowhere to go. Thomas can't save you. That old lady can't save you. No one can save you. So you might as well stop fighting. I kicked at him, screaming, hoping Mom would hear and finally do something. But she never came. Jeff left eventually, leaving me sobbing on the floor. I crawled to my window, desperate for air, for escape, for anything. That's when I saw it. A small piece of paper tucked into the window frame from outside. I managed to work it free with my fingernail. It was from Thomas, his handwriting cramped and urgent. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Be ready. T. I didn't know what he was planning, but it was my only hope. I tucked the note under my mattress and tried to sleep, counting down the hours until 3 p.m. The next day dragged by. Jeff watched me more closely than ever, as if he sensed something was coming. He'd taken the day off work to keep an eye on things, he said. At 2:45, I heard sirens in the distance. Jeff went to the window, frowning. The sirens got closer, and I saw smoke rising from somewhere in the neighborhood. Fire at the Johnsons, Mom said, looking out another window. Looks bad. Jeff cursed. The Johnsons were 3 houses down, close enough that the fire department would want to evacuate surrounding homes as a precaution. Sure enough, a firefighter knocked on our door minutes later. Ma'am, we need everyone to evacuate while we get this under control. Of course, Mom said, grabbing her purse. Honey, get your shoes. Jeff looked suspicious, but couldn't argue with the fire department. As we filed out of the house, I scanned the the crowd of neighbors gathering on the street. There, Thomas, standing at the very edge of the restraining order boundary, his eyes locked on mine. In the chaos of the evacuation, with firefighters rushing around and neighbors milling about, Jeff's attention was divided. He was trying to watch me while also maintaining his concerned citizen act. I started edging away from my parents, moving toward the cluster of kids from the neighborhood. Jeff noticed and started after me, but a firefighter stopped him to ask about gas lines in our house. This was my chance. I broke into a run, weaving through the crowd. I heard Jeff yelling behind me, Mom screaming my name, but I didn't stop. Thomas saw me coming and started moving too, staying just outside the restraining order boundary but heading for his car. I could hear Jeff crashing through the crowd behind me, shouting for someone to stop me. She's confused, he yelled. She's not safe. Someone stop her. But in the chaos of the fire evacuation, no one paid attention to one running child. I reached the boundary line just as Thomas reached his car. He couldn't cross to help me. That would violate the order and give Jeff everything he needed to have Thomas arrested. Run to Mrs. Grant's house, Thomas shouted. Nathaniel's there with papers. I veered left, sprinting toward Mrs. Grant's house 2 streets over. Behind me, Jeff had given up on getting help and was chasing me himself. He was faster, gaining ground. My lungs burned as I ran, my legs shaking from weeks of being locked in my room. I could hear Jeff's footsteps getting closer, his breathing heavy with rage. Mrs. Grant's house came into view. The front door was open, Nathaniel standing on the porch with another woman in a suit. Hurry, Nathaniel called. I pushed myself harder, but Jeff's hand brushed my back, grabbing for my shirt. I twisted away, stumbling but staying on my feet. Just a few more yards. Got you! Jeff's hand closed on my arm, yanking me backward. But we were in Mrs. Grant's yard now, and the woman in the suit stepped forward. Let her go, Mr. Morrison. I'm Judge Patricia Hawkins from Family Court. I've just signed an emergency protection order. Jeff's grip loosened in shock. What? You can't? I can, and I have, Judge Hawkins said calmly. Based on the evidence Ms. Nathaniel presented, including medical records, photographs, and sworn statements from multiple witnesses, I'm placing this child in emergency protective custody. This is kidnapping, Jeff sputtered. I'll have your job. You'll do nothing, Thomas said, appearing at the edge of the yard, still carefully outside the restraining order boundary, except face the consequences of what you've done. More sirens approached, but these weren't fire trucks. 2 police cars pulled up, and officers I didn't recognize got out. State police, not local. Jeffrey Morrison, one said, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of child abuse, sexual assault of a minor, and witness intimidation. Jeff's face went white. He looked around wildly, seeing Mom running up the street, seeing the neighbors starting to gather, seeing his carefully constructed world crumbling. This is a mistake, he said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. I'm a pillar of this community. I coach softball. I run a charity. You're a predator, Mrs. Grant said quietly, and we have proof. As the officers approached with handcuffs, Jeff made one last desperate play. She's lying. They all are. Thomas manipulated them. Check his computer. You'll find things, I guarantee it. We did check his computer, one of the state officers said. We found the evidence you planted there yesterday. We also found your fingerprints on the USB drive you used to transfer it. Your mistake was buying that drive with your credit card. Jeff's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Behind him, Mom had stopped in the middle of the street, her face a mask of shock. Mom? I called out, some part of me still hoping she'd choose me, even now. She looked at me, then at Jeff being handcuffed, then at the neighbors watching. I saw the moment she made her choice. This is a misunderstanding, she said, rushing to Jeff's side. My daughter is troubled. She makes things up. Jeff would never. Ma'am, Judge Hawkins interrupted. Your daughter has extensive documented injuries consistent with abuse. Multiple witnesses have come forward. Your husband has been caught planting evidence to frame an innocent man. This is not a misunderstanding. Mom's face crumbled, but not with realization or remorse, with anger. At me. You've ruined everything, she hissed. Our life, our reputation, everything. No, Thomas said firmly. Jeff ruined everything. You enabled him. Your daughter survived despite both of you. The state police led Jeff away as he continued to protest, to threaten, to play the victim, but no one was listening anymore. The spell was broken. Neighbors who had shunned Thomas now looked ashamed. Parents who had believed Jeff's lies whispered among themselves. The truth, so long suppressed, was finally in the light. What happens now? I asked Nathaniel. Now you're safe, she said, putting her arm around me. You'll stay with a foster family while we sort out the legal matters. Thomas is fighting to get his daughters back. The evidence you helped gather about their mother will help his case, and you'll need to testify against Jeff. I nodded, exhausted but relieved. It wasn't over. There would be trials, testimony, difficult days ahead, but for the first time in so long, I could breathe. As the crowd dispersed, Thomas approached the boundary line. We stood there, just feet apart but unable to hug, unable to properly thank each other. You saved me, I said. You saved yourself, he replied. I just helped, and you helped save my girls. The judge is reviewing their case tomorrow, thanks to everything that's come to light. Mrs. Grant joined us, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry it took us so long to see the truth, to act on it. You acted when it mattered, I said. That's what counts. The fire at the Johnsons was under control. A small kitchen fire that had produced a lot of smoke but little damage. Thomas smiled slightly. Convenient timing, I said. Very, he agreed. Almost like someone who knows about electrical systems might have suggested to Mr. Johnson that his old wiring needed checking, and that if sparks happened to fly at just the right time. Thomas! Mrs. Grant scolded, but she was smiling too. As Nathaniel led me to her car, I looked back at the neighborhood that had been my prison. Jeff's house stood empty now, Mom having fled to her sister's rather than face the neighbor's judgment. Thomas's house had new graffiti. Someone had crossed out predator and written hero instead. It wasn't a perfect ending. I was heading to a foster home, unsure of my future. Thomas still had to fight for his daughters. The legal battles ahead would be long and painful, but I was free. Jeff was in custody. The truth was known, and sometimes that's enough to start healing. I watched from Nathaniel's car as more police vehicles arrived. State troopers were setting up a perimeter around Jeff's house while crime scene technicians carried equipment inside. Through the chaos, I spotted Mom arguing with an officer near her car, gesticulating wildly. We need to go to the station, Nathaniel said, starting the engine. They'll want your statement while everything's fresh. The drive took us past Thomas's house. He was standing in his driveway with Judge Hawkins, showing her documents. His daughter's case file, I realized. The judge nodded as she read, occasionally asking questions. At the state police station, everything moved differently than my first attempt to report Jeff. A female detective with kind eyes led me to a comfortable room with couches instead of metal chairs. She introduced herself as Detective Martinez and explained she specialized in cases like mine. Take your your time, she said, setting up a recorder. We have all day if we need it. I talked for 3 hours. Every detail, every incident, every time Jeff had hurt me. Detective Martinez never interrupted, never looked skeptical. She took notes and asked gentle, clarifying questions. When I finished, she had tears in her eyes. You're very brave, she said. Your testimony, combined with the evidence Thomas collected and the medical documentation, gives us a strong case. While I was giving my statement, things were happening fast back in the neighborhood. Nathaniel kept getting updates on her phone. Jeff's computer had been seized. They'd found the security camera footage from my bedroom. Hours and hours of it. The USB drive he'd used to plant evidence on Thomas's computer contained traces of other files too. Bad files. He's going away for a long time, Nathaniel said quietly. That evening, I was placed with an emergency foster family, the Nguyens, who lived across town. They were an older couple who'd been fostering kids for 20 years. Mrs. Nguyen made me soup while Mr. Nguyen set up a bedroom for me. No locks on the doors here, he said gently. You can come and go as you please. I slept fitfully that first night, jumping at every sound, but no one came to my door. No one tried to hurt me. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Nathaniel picked me up early for a meeting with the prosecutor. She was a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who walked me through what would happen next. Jeff's been denied bail, she explained. He's considered a flight risk and a danger to the community. The trial won't be for several months, but we have a strong case. What about Mom? I asked. Patricia's expression hardened. She's being charged as an accessory. The evidence shows she knew about the abuse and failed to protect you. She's out on bail but has a no-contact order. She can't come near you. After the meeting, Nathaniel drove me past my old neighborhood. I needed to see Thomas, to thank him properly. The restraining order had been lifted now that Jeff was in custody. Thomas's house looked different. The predator graffiti was completely gone, painted over with fresh white paint. Neighbors were in his yard, the same ones who'd shunned him, helping repair his slashed tires and damaged property. He was on his porch with his daughters. They were back. Both girls looked healthier already, playing with new toys while Thomas watched protectively. You did it, I said, running up the steps. Thomas hugged me tightly. We did it. All of us together. Alexander and her sister joined the hug, and we stood there for a long moment. 4 survivors who'd found each other in the darkness. Mrs. Grant appeared from next door, carrying a casserole. For your dinner, she said to Thomas, then turned to me. How are you holding up, dear? Better, I said honestly. The Nguyens are nice. Good people, she nodded. I've known them for years. You'll be safe there. The neighborhood had transformed in just one day. Parents who'd pulled their children away from Thomas now brought them over to apologize. The woman who'd suggested calling CPS on him brought cookies and a tearful apology. I should have seen it, she said. Jeff was so convincing, but the signs were there. Thomas was gracious, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. These people had been ready to destroy him based on Jeff's lies. That afternoon, I had my first appointment with a trauma counselor. Dr. Patel was nothing like the school counselor who'd dismissed me. She listened without judgment and gave me tools to cope with the nightmares and anxiety. Healing isn't linear, she said. Some days will be harder than others. That's normal. The Nguyens were patient with my struggles. When I woke up screaming that first week, Mrs. Nguyen made me tea and sat with me until I calmed down. When I couldn't eat certain foods because they reminded me of Jeff, Mr. Nguyen learned to cook new dishes. School was complicated. News of Jeff's arrest had spread quickly. Some kids stared at me with pity, others with curiosity. My teacher apologized profusely for not believing me. I'm mandated to report suspicions of abuse, she said, tears in her eyes. I failed you. I'm so sorry. The principal held an assembly about recognizing abuse and speaking up. It felt too little, too late, but at least they were trying. 2 weeks into my new life, I testified before a grand jury. It was terrifying, but Patricia Chen prepared me well. I spoke clearly about everything Jeff had done, everything Mom had ignored. The grand jury returned multiple indictments against both of them. Thomas testified too, presenting all the evidence he'd collected. His meticulous documentation painted a clear picture of Jeff's predatory behavior and the systematic way he'd isolated me. The judge in Thomas's custody case was the same Judge Hawkins who'd signed my emergency protection order. She reviewed the evidence about his ex-wife's abuse, including new testimony from teachers who'd noticed the girl's injuries but hadn't reported them. I'm granting full custody to Mr. Thomas, she ruled, and ordering supervised visitation only for the mother, pending completion of parenting classes and anger management. Thomas cried when the ruling came down. His daughters clung to him, finally safe from their mother's violence. The criminal case against Jeff moved forward slowly. His lawyer tried various tactics, claiming Thomas had manipulated evidence, suggesting I'd been coached, even trying to get the security camera footage thrown out. But Patricia Chen countered every move. Mom's case was more complicated. Her lawyer argued she was a victim too, manipulated by Jeff, but the prosecutor had evidence of her actively covering for him, threatening me to stay quiet, choosing him over my safety repeatedly. 3 months after Jeff's arrest, I was called to testify in a pretrial hearing. Seeing him in an orange jumpsuit, shackled and diminished, was surreal. He'd seemed so powerful before, so untouchable. Now he was just a pathetic man in chains. I testified for 2 hours, detailing the abuse. Jeff's lawyer tried to trip me up, suggesting I was confused, that Thomas had planted ideas in my head, but I stayed calm and stuck to the truth. Thomas saved me, I said firmly. Jeff hurt me. Those are the facts. The judge ruled there was sufficient evidence for trial. Jeff's lawyer immediately tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Patricia Chen wasn't interested in anything less than significant prison time. Mom's trial came first. I had to testify again, this time about her knowledge and complicity. It was harder than testifying against Jeff. Despite everything, part of me still wanted her to love me, to choose me. She was convicted of child endangerment and failure to protect. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison, suspended to 1 year with probation. She'd have to register as a child abuse offender and could never have unsupervised contact with minors again. Mom looked at me as they led her away. No apology, no remorse, just anger that I'd ruined her life. Jeff's trial was a media circus. Pillar of community exposed as predator, the headlines read. His charity work, his coaching, all of it was revealed as grooming behavior. Other families came forward with concerns they'd dismissed because of his reputation. The security camera footage was devastating. The prosecutor had to carefully edit it to protect my privacy, while still showing Jeff's pattern of abuse. The jury looked sick as they watched. Thomas testified about his observations, his documentation, how Jeff had systematically isolated me. Mrs. Grant testified about Jeff's threats and attempts to frame Thomas. Even some neighbors who'd believed Jeff testified about things they'd noticed in hindsight. Jeff took the stand in his own defense, still trying to play the victim. He claimed I'd misunderstood his his affection, that Thomas had twisted innocent interactions. But under cross-examination, his story fell apart. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 15. Jeff screamed as they dragged him away, shouting that I'd ruined his life, that Thomas had manipulated everyone, but no one was listening anymore. After the trials, life slowly found a new rhythm. I stayed with Nguyens, who'd offered to be my long-term foster parents. They gave me stability and patience as I worked through trauma. Thomas and his daughters became like extended family. We had dinner together every Sunday. The girls and I bonded over our shared experiences, supporting each other through the healing process. Mrs. Grant became the neighborhood grandmother I'd never had. She taught me to knit, helped with homework, and always had fresh cookies waiting. The anniversary of my escape was hard. I'd been in therapy for a year by then, making progress but still struggling with nightmares and trust issues. Dr. Patel reminded me that healing takes time. You're not the same person you were before, she said. Trauma changes us, but you're stronger than you know. School improved gradually. I made new friends who didn't know my whole story, who liked me for who I was becoming rather than pitying who I'd been. Thomas got a new job at a security company that actually appreciated his attention to detail and protective instincts. His daughters thrived in therapy and at their new school, free from their mother's abuse. The neighborhood transformed too. Jeff's house was sold, a young family moving in who knew nothing of its history. The community became more vigilant, more willing to listen when children spoke up. I testified at several community meetings about recognizing abuse, about believing children, about the danger of predators who hide behind respectability. It was hard, but necessary. 2 years after Jeff's conviction, I spoke at a conference for social workers and law enforcement about my case, how the system had failed me initially, how one person's determination to document the truth had saved me. Thomas saw what others refused to see, I said. He risked everything to protect a child who wasn't even his. That's what we need more of. The Nguyens officially adopted me on my 16th birthday. The courtroom was packed with everyone who'd become my real family. Thomas and his daughters, Mrs. Grant, Nathaniel, even Detective Martinez and Patricia Chen. Judge Hawkins, who'd signed my emergency protection order years earlier, performed the adoption. It's wonderful to see you thriving, she said, signing the papers that made me officially a Nguyen. That night, we had a huge celebration at Thomas's house. The whole neighborhood came. The same people who'd once shunned him now celebrating our survival and resilience. You saved my girls, Thomas said quietly, watching his daughters play with the other kids. Your courage in speaking up gave me the evidence I needed to protect them. We saved each other, I replied. As I looked around at my chosen family, I thought about how different my life could have been if Thomas hadn't moved in next door, if he hadn't been watching, if he hadn't risked everything to help me. Jeff was serving his time, no longer a threat to anyone. Mom had disappeared after her release, moving across the country. I didn't miss her. The scars remained, physical and emotional. Some nights I still woke up in a panic. Some days I struggled to trust, but I was healing, surrounded by people who truly loved and protected me. That's the thing about survival. It's not a destination you reach and then everything's fine. It's a journey you take one day at a time with the right people beside you. Thomas still lives next door to the Nguyens now. We made sure to find a house near his when we moved. His daughters call me their big sister. Mrs. Grant moved to our new neighborhood too, unable to bear being separated from her kids. We're an unconventional family, bound not by blood but by something stronger. The choice to protect each other, to believe each other, to never let another child suffer in silence. And every day, I choose to keep healing, keep growing, keep living. Because that's the best revenge against those who tried to break me. I'm not broken. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor.